So what is the Capstone Program? The Capstone Program represents the pinnacle of learning experiences achieved by the end of 5th, 8th, and 12th grade. Capstones are sustained inquiry interdisciplinary projects that serve as a culminating academic and intellectual experience for our students. And they're driven by the constructivist pedagogy, including personalized learning, student-centered learning, project-based learning, and co-constructed curriculum. These are distinguished by student interest and agency. So there was a wonderful question in the Q&A that said, what is Capstone's origin story? Give me something that I can't just look up online. And it's a really beautiful origin story. It ties into what makes HPA so special and hopefully why you send your kids here. And it's this history of experiential and student agency-driven education, from our marine science program to the work we do with turtle tagging and outdoors. And then a lot of the sustainability practice and work that's happened on our campus and in our gardens in the 90s and early 2000s. These form the foundation of what we're embarking on. The success of the Independent Science Research Program and Dr. Bill Wicking, beginning in 2004, when many students were accepted not just to their dream schools, but dream internships and jobs, was traction that led to the building that I'm in right now, the Energy Lab. And that deeply influenced the work that we're doing right here at the Upper Campus. And actually, we have an OG on this call, Kristen Tarnas. The spark really began in her classroom, working with previous Dean of Academics, Martin Farrell, and this vision of a K-12 capstone program, having capstones in 5, 8, and 12. And so the work began, the work to train faculty and staff, to try to build a culture rooted in student agency with lots of training from Kupaho on Oahu, Olin College of Engineering, the Buck Institute in Product-Based Learning. This wasn't just watching an educational documentary and getting swept away. This has roots in who we are as an institution, and that's what's really exciting about this job. In 2017, we formed a task force made up of grade 5, grade 8 teachers, Andrew Kelsey, the director of college counseling, and faculty with deep industry knowledge, and built out the plan for what we're living right now. This is our second year of truly living 5, 8, and 12 capstones, as last year we launched our grade 12 capstone program. And oh, if I had the time, I would tell you these really remarkable and beautiful stories that happened over Zoom in May. This is built into our strategic plan, from our board to our head of school, Patrick Phillips. It's really a part of our past, present, and future. And so grade 5, to me, is this beautiful start of the capstone process. The seeds are planted and they start to begin to grow. And I want to pause this presentation. I want to pause this to throw it to Kristen Tarnas to talk about the grade 5 experience. Kristen, thank you so much.
Hello, I'm looking at these names. Where are you, my families? Ah, I see one. Kumi, hi, how are you? And I see a past one. Hi, Diane. Good to see you. So 5th grade is the beginning, and of course, I think they're the most brilliant ones. But since you have people older than 5th grade, I won't say that too loud. In 5th grade, it is the beginning of our capstones, and they really are incredibly capable. So the goal of all of our capstones is to really give students an opportunity to show what they've got. It really is a chance for them to be independent and to also make use of guidance. So in 5th grade, obviously, it's very guided and scaffolded. So I unfolded as the facilitator, but there's a lot of opportunities for students to take off and run with different steps of their capstone projects. In fact, just today, we are in our ideation phase. And we're talking about, like, we've learned a lot as an institution about bees because we've been doing bees for a long time. Like, where do we want to go next? And we actually decided today as a class that we're going to take our capstones in a little bit of a different direction, and we're going to go with planetary health. And so it was exciting. So we do it collaboratively. obviously what we're looking for is for students to be able to show themselves as critical thinkers, collaborators, creators, and communicators, verbally, in writing. And I tell them this is your opportunity to really pick something you love, because if you pick something that you think I'll love, you're gonna be really sorry in about 3.5 weeks while you're trying to research something you don't love as much as I do. So it's pretty exciting, and they do a really beautiful job. For any of you who got to see them at the end of last year, I mean, they are always pretty impressive. We all, at all levels, we're working on ideation, research, project management, project development, and presentation. And it is guided and facilitated, but it's really managed with a lot of conferring and feedback. And that's something that is important for students to learn. Fifth graders, they're beginning researchers. So they're really coming to understand a lot of their information literacy skills in terms of sourcing and note taking and citations. But some of them really take off, and they do a lot of independent work. So I think it's one of the exciting things about the capstone is there's an enormous range of possible success for students, and it's really a chance. It is an evaluation. It's an end of a division of evaluation, and we get to see that as teachers. But I always tell them the most important part of this being an evaluation is for you to reflect on what are you noticing about your strengths and your challenges, and then what are you going to do about that as you move forward. And they're really responsive to it. So Erin, I don't know if there's anything I'm missing that you would like me to make sure I mention.
No, it's perfect. And I think more will come out of the Q&A at the end as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. I could go on forever, but probably other people want to talk tonight. So
I'm gonna throw it to one of those other people,
okay, good. Okay, good.
Dagan Bernstein, who is a grade 8 capstone teacher, a musician, and brilliant mathematician. Dagan.
Thank you, Aaron. Definitely not a brilliant mathematician, but I appreciate that. So yeah, in 8th grade, the capstone program, it's really a scaffolded process when we look at the K-12 experience, 5, 8, 12. So, we build off of what is developmentally appropriate from Kristen's foundations, and we start to increase the student independence. So there are 2 other capstone teachers. Currently, we've had 4 cohorts as well, just depending on the year. And I act as a coach and a facilitator for the student as they start to explore their own independent ideas. And the focus really starts to, as I loosen the guidance, if you will, and support their independence, where they take more initiative with designing their project and planning their project. So they really start to learn some of those first project management skills to help them, to succeed when they are seniors and they're building a product or a project that's a little more complex. So we dig in a little bit more with introducing some design thinking approaches, just general project management, project planning, introducing new tools and new technologies for them to explore. And one other thing that we do is we really create a community focus and begin to create connections for students with the community. And that helps build on, all the 4 C's, but critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration. But I think specifically communication, as these young learners start to, look towards high school, they have to become more competent in communicating with adults and external mentors and people in our community. And like Kristen had mentioned, always being reflective, always, really embracing the process and really understanding their challenges, their successes, their failures, and really creating a safe space for them to be curious. And, we talk a lot about wonder, one of our core values, and get them to try things and know that this process is really what the capstone experience is. And the product is important. The process is part of that as well. which culminates in their presentation at the end of the year where they really get to share about their learning and their experience. So I love 8th grade. It's a great opportunity. It's for them to prepare for high school. And we have a lot of new families join us at HPA in the middle school years. And I think it's a great culmination of their K-8 experience as they transition to a new physical space at the high school and new learning opportunities there. And we want to give them the skills to succeed when they do enter the 9-12 division.
Thank you so much, Dagan. I'm going to jump right back into this presentation. So this imagery, the symbolism of a plant growing, to me helps kind of showcase this journey. In 8th grade, kind of tending and watching that plant grow. And then in 12th grade, having it interact and impact with the world. What makes a capstone at HPA are these 4 C's: creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and 3 words that I love from our vision statement because they're active words: create, lead, and thrive. Those words to me really represent what I have been absolutely blessed to see in grade 5. I try not to tear up every time I'm in Kristen Tarnis's classroom, but it's hard sometimes when you see these brilliant children creating, leading, and thriving. And I see the same thing in grade 8 when I'm with Dagan as well, and have been privileged as I work with 12th graders to see this in action. And these learning targets have not only formed the structure, but they've helped to create an assessment framework, and they've helped to explain the journey, because what this really is a journey for our seniors and for our 8th graders especially, and 5th graders. Ideation, research, project management, product development, presentation, and then impact, both personal and external. These form our rubrics, these form the structures for our year. And what they do is they help us create a toolkit for our students, building interdisciplinary skills training that creates a shared culture and shared competencies. And this allows us to have interconnected learning targets and goals at each grade level, as well as we try to build out the capstone process into K4, preparing for 5, 6, 7, preparing for 8, and 9, 10, 11, preparing for 12. And I want to talk to you as someone who teaches a senior capstone course about this journey that we're going on with our students. This image comes from our grade 12 playbook, our handbook, which I would love to share with anyone that's interested. And it starts really in the beginning by living this phrase, makahana ke'ike, by doing one learns, where students create a product, a project, a venture that will have an impact by directly addressing a problem, a need, or an issue in our community, in the world, or in their lives. This phrase, go, the sustenance you'll need lies ahead, them building out the agile project management of their capstone project and product. Teaching project management is so critical in this process and so vital for children and youth to understand how to build something or how to take an idea over the course of days, weeks, months, and years. Then we work with our students to assess the scope and the features and functions of their capstone. From there, we're asking them to go forth and find collaborators, mentors from within the school or in our community. And it's time for them to kind of reach a new gear, getting their ideas out into the world. And what I love about this is the legacy that they create. Their product is carried forward in many cases by future students when students create really wonderful SOPs or training manuals or white papers. And many students continue on as seniors with their capstone into university, into gap years. And to me, that's a really beautiful journey. So all seniors go through this structure together. It forms how we break up months, how we break up semesters. We have shared milestones that we're all embarking on. But there are different capstone courses that almost serve as themes what happens is there are smaller cohorts now where students can focus and hone unique content and skills that are within their capstones. This year, our capstones, which form a class, one of 5 or 6 classes that seniors are taking this year, are what you see below. And what's so cool about this is that each of these classes are taught by teachers that have put forth these proposals. We've taken data that we've collected from juniors to choose capstone classes and capstone teachers at the senior level that are going to fit within what students want. And there's so much flexibility within classes like the art of story, data-driven entrepreneurship, sustainability through action, that really anything a high school student or a senior wants to do, they can do. They're just going to get specific content knowledge and specific skills. Really, the goal is that a teacher is not just a teacher. They're a coach, they're a facilitator, they're a connector, and a uniter. And we're doing it within the kind of lens of these classes. This work at 5, 8, and 12 is rooted in confidence, and it's rooted in authenticity. Getting children and youth to feel worthy of getting their ideas out into the world is at the core of what we're doing. Getting them to feel excited about sharing who they are and what makes them unique is huge. And getting them to authentically connect where they come from, what they love, who's in their network, what skills they have and what skills they want to learn is really key to this process. So something that we do at 5, 8, and 12, and I'm really excited to do it with 5th graders next week, is something called a head, heart, and purpose ideation activity. And what we do is in one part of that circle, students are filling out what makes them passionate about learning, what they care about, with a lot of the prompts that are here that can be tailored to the 5th, 8th, and 12th grade level. And then kind of what their skills are, what their network is like, what knowledge they have and what knowledge they want to learn. And they're putting it in that right circle there, and they're connecting it to purpose. I know I'm going through this really quickly. I just want to give you an understanding of how our ideation is rooted in what makes each of your children so unique in each of their superpowers. And this serves as a really early ideation tool that gets them to put forth ideas that they're constantly iterating on. Connecting their passions and interests with the tools and network that they need to kind of go forth. This is an image of Pualani Lincoln. She teaches a capstone called the Migrations of Moana Nui Akea. And this is on Kauai High, where Makali'i, a voyaging canoe, is. And getting students out there seeing it, getting them to understand, like Patrick Phillips' son did last year, who was in that capstone, the power of what it means to connect with place and yourself and get their ideas out into the world is really a part of this journey. And so this phrase again, go, the sustenance you'll need lies ahead. Really, you're trying to teach children and teenagers that not only are they worthy of getting their ideas out into the world, that process is hard, and that the data and information that comes back might change the kind of outcomes that you're seeking and searching for. A lot of this is rooted in design thinking, going from inspiration and ideation to implementation. And so much of this is about culture and community. Having our students do this journey with each other, having them feel like this is just like a sports team or performing arts, that they're in charge of this process and that they're in charge of their learning and academic future. And so much of this is rooted in storytelling, presentation and pitch rooted in sense of place and personal connection. Here we see a student presenting Regina Gutierrez, who is a senior from Spain, who is in PUA's Migrations of Moana Nui Akea Capstone, sharing out her capstone idea, her kind of elevator pitch to a group of students in a different capstone. A student last year whose capstone was creating a 13-course Turkish dinner that told the history of himself and his people, presenting unbelievably bravely to a packed house pre-COVID of 400 students at Monday morning assembly. As I mentioned before, project management is core to this experience. We're having our students, especially in the 8th and 12th grade level, use Trello. I learn way more, I think, from Dagan and what he's doing in 8th grade. And I've actually utilized it to teach my 12th grade cohort about Trello. And it's a fantastic digital project management tool that allows our students to kind of map out what they're working on. And then all of these great analog tools, a lot of it taken from Stanford Design School or IDEO, these great ways of mapping out what your plan looks like and how you're going to get your ideas out to the world. So this idea of getting an idea out early, this idea of makahana ka'ike, by doing one learns, is really core to what we're embarking on. It's really about getting a first working version out into the world so that you can learn from it. It's not just having one thing that culminates at the end of the year. It's having your ideas get shared out. It's having your research be action oriented. That's what we're embarking on in 5th, 8th, and 12th grade. A student from last year's art community and culture capstone, her capstone was about taking used clothes and creating art in the style of the 90s, which has now become a core part of fashion now, and creating a business out of it. And it was really cool to have her tackle art, sustainability, and entrepreneurship all at the same time. This idea of craftsmanship, this idea of apprenticeship, and having our students connect with mentors age appropriately from outside of HPA, reaching out under supervision in a safe way, and finding incredible storytellers and technical experts, subject matter experts. That's what makes their work so real. Here's Justin Ah-Chung, an incredibly talented videographer on Oahu, who's partnered with multiple students, not only in videography, but in storytelling in general. I think when our youth are working with people that aren't in our HPA learning community, when they are partnered with people who are experts in their craft, the work that they're embarking on becomes even more real. And so I want to close by kind of talking about some of the learning lessons that we had when we had to do a virtual learning capstone showcase. And they were all rooted in what makes this program so powerful, which is human connection and creating a learning community, really growing a learning community. Some of the most tear invoking and chicken skin invoking presentations were when parents were on the call talking about how they partnered with their child or their teenager on their capstone, how it became a family event that connected them to their grandparents, how mentors or their teachers in Kumu from previous years played key roles in their capstone. That's really the dream, is that cross-pollination occurs and our learning community grows. And so what going virtual meant, in many ways, it wasn't exactly what we wanted, was it allowed us to bring family mentors and other key stakeholders into the same kind of virtual Zoom box. It allowed us to break down the walls of our school and have our learning be relevant, personal, and potent. And it allowed us to create protocols for these showcases and then constantly break them to create greater human connection, more anecdotes, and way more reflection. It is a really, it's a really powerful thing to get to watch youth have agency and ownership over their education. And as they embark into a world that is not as settled as it once was, it's vital that they do that. I've spoken for long enough, and I'm really excited to answer some of your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron. We do have a few questions coming in. If you have questions you'd like to add to the chat, please remember to direct them to either to me, Patrick Phillips, or to Amy Cole, our Director of Studies. I know I've got one, and I know Amy's got one. I'll turn mine out. I think, Aaron, you touched on this in a couple of different ways, but this is really a question for you and Dagan and Kristen. You talked a little bit about helping kids find what they want to do. The question is more about what happens if they get part of the way through and they realize that they want to be doing something else, or they're drawn some other way. What happens in that kind of situation? I'll leave that to all three of you.
Dagan, you want to start that first?
Sure. Great question. Yeah, the big pivot, the question of the pivot. It does come up, and I think what's most effective is to have conversation with all the important stakeholders. Me, the student, the division principal. I guess it depends on where it is in the process. Those are probably for the bigger pivots. But it always starts with conversation, understanding why, what's going on. Sometimes they're just normal frustrations that need to be talked out and just readdressed as opportunities rather than things to completely do a massive shift on. I always speak from my own personal experiences and how I manage pivots in projects that I do in my life. And I have found that 99% of the time, it's really just a natural growth process that occurs when you're managing something that has a lot of complex layers. But yeah, there are the rare occasions where the conversation has to go a little deeper, and it's important to bring in the important stakeholders and know the student is supported to do what's appropriate for that situation. So it is situation specific quite often.
There's so many opportunities, and I can speak more to grade 12 and 8 for ideation to continue. It's not like ideation's in this box, right, for like the first month or two of school. And to be honest with you, if an idea is interacting with the world, it should change and evolve. If data and information are being collected and coming back, the goal is that an initial idea for their capstone should shift and change with what they're getting back to. And I watched this really incredible moment in Kristen Tarnas's grade 5 a couple of years ago, where students were presenting their research to families across HPA and teachers. And a student said, I had my mindset on something, and as I did research and I understood it more and more and more, my product or my outcome changed and shifted. To me, that's a really beautiful outcome of this process. Kristen, can you answer that question as well?
I first start with being really clear that it is ideal to find something you want to stick with. And over the years, I've been able to get clearer and clearer with that because I can actually give them examples of what that might look like. And then I agree, Dagan, a lot of times it's just that a student has hit a point of frustration, and that it's really the frustration, which is normal. Those are the cycles we go through in research, where we hit points where we're frustrated with what we're finding or what we're not finding. And so, yeah, there's a lot of conferring and working on that. Also in 5th grade, I actually have them do 3 different proposals. And so I vet those proposals pretty heavily, and I can kind of tell when a student's doing something and it's not for something that they're genuinely interested in, because they're already in 5th grade pretty attuned to thinking about what they think sounds like a good idea or what they think sounds impressive. So I've gotten pretty good at like kind of catching that. Like, you think I'm going to be impressed by this choice, or your parents are going to be impressed by this choice. Let's talk a little bit more about where so a lot of it is in kind of sensitive conferring around that and really making good choices. So I think that an ounce of prevention is very helpful in this situation. And then I have very rarely actually had someone who needed to do a complete shift. And that's fair to some degree, because we're not always able to hit on what is the ultimate thing we want to be thinking about. And that's fine, because a lot of this process, it really is about skills. It really is about the skill of managing a project and researching. And it's okay if we move forward. I think there's been a couple of times where we've shifted dramatically because a student had a very strong feeling about it. Certainly not ideal. I mean, and I tell my students that up up front. Like when that has happened, what ends up happening is you've shortened your time frame to start over. And it's not an ideal place to be. But for the most part, I don't see that. Very rarely happens. And students are usually, I agree. I expect people to shift somewhat, because if they're not shifting according to their research and as science mindedness, I don't think that's actually a good sign. They should be finding places of flexibility and shift. So I think students handle it very well, but what's key is really that ideation process you were talking about, Erin. I think that we've gotten really good at that. I mean, I've gone through the last few weeks, we've gone through several different phases of ideation, and that's critical. So I think we've gotten pretty good at actually helping them hone in on something.
Thank you. Patrick, any other questions?
Yeah, there's a question of, I think you sort of alluded to this too, but do projects ever continue at HPA beyond the student's time here? Meaning, does the project kind of get handed down to somebody else, or does somebody pick it up and say, oh, that was interesting, and they're going to carry it in a different direction?
Absolutely. And what we're getting really good at is creating a knowledge base, creating a right now it's a beautiful Google sheet that holds the white papers and SOPs for a lot of our capstones. And that's really exciting because, especially in the sciences, it's not always possible to complete something over the course of a year. And so a lot of the capstones that came out of biotechnology last year were taken on from students that had graduated many years before. That is extremely exciting to me, not just in the sciences, from social studies and other disciplines. It allows for much more complex and powerful kind of work to emerge from that process. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see a student like Avani Jamin, who graduated last year, who came in as a freshman obsessed with our turtle tagging program, working with Laura Jim, who has done so much of that great work with Mark Rice. And she'd been working on her capstone for years, even before her senior year. And I think it's a really cool model to think about, where what they love and what they're interested and passionate in can then serve as when they have even more time their senior year to work on it. So it's a great question. Thank you, Patrick.
And I'm combining two questions here. Question about, you had listed, you showed in your presentation, Erin, a number of the senior capstone courses. And if a student was interested in one of those areas, they would jump into those courses. But what about when a student has a different idea, an independent idea? How does that play out? Who do they talk to? What does that look like?
They start working with me now. And what's great is I'm working with juniors right now. Next week, we're doing that ideation exercise with juniors, which is exciting for me because we're not only building skills of ideation in, but we're building that culture really early on. And I think my goal is for them to look at all of those courses and think about what they could pull away from one of them, right? So if you've been working on your capstone for 2 years, but the skills of data science and entrepreneurship are going to help you, I'd want them to first look at that. And even if they're starting at a milestone 3 or 4 places ahead of a student there, it still gives them a space where they're going to get even more knowledge too. But as you looked at those 10, which you can't right now, I'm sorry, but I can send them to you. The goal is that cross-pollination occurs. A student can see different skills and content knowledge within exactly what they want to work on and go and meet with these different teachers and find different mentors and spend a couple days in one room and then a week in another, so that they're really getting advantage of all of these subject matter experts and mentors too. This year, we offered an independent capstone for students. They completed a formal proposal in May for it. I'm not sure if we'll do that next year because I think that there's so much value of them jumping in to another one, even if they're ahead of the game, to gain some of that content knowledge.
Erin, you spoke about it earlier, but I'm not sure if I would have heard it the way I understand it. So I just want to go back and restate that for senior year, the development of capstone courses begins with a junior survey about their interests.
Yeah.
also begins with teachers putting forth pretty rigorous proposals about what courses they want to teach. And then we marry those together. So those courses that you saw listed are not stagnant. They really do move based on the junior class interest and on the teacher's expertise and passion. And I know that there's similar iterations that happen within the 5th grade classroom and within the 8th grade classroom. Before launching into it, the students have room to be able to kind of see their options and have voice.
This only works if they're interested and passionate about what they're working on. And so it's my job and all of our jobs to consistently work on that and to help and to provide scaffolding to still make sure they own that process, but to still provide scaffolding to get them in a space where they want to. And I've had students senior year switch 2 weeks into another where there's room and space available, because whatever best serves them, I want them to be in that capstone.
Erin, when we were at the Capstone Consortium, which Dagan is part of the leadership team of that now, which is a national project, we actually met with panels of college counselors
Yeah.
and talked to them about what they were looking for. And I have to say, from a personal parent perspective, my son actually took on one of those projects that someone else had started, and they did a component of it. And then when they left, there was some equipment, and so he took that on with another student. And I have to say, it does make a student stand out in an application process. And there's an opportunity to some degree. Erin uses the word agency, and it really matters. I mean, if you think about the people you want to employ in your businesses or the people that you want to interact with, you want to have people who take initiative, people who have good vision, people who advocate for themselves. Schools, colleges are looking for the same thing. They want people who are willing to step up and stand out. And these programs are something that stand out from the usual of what, and they're seeing enormous numbers of really high quality candidates at these schools. And I know that that was a component of, so my son had incredible college offers, just phenomenal. And he's now at University of Pennsylvania and he's really happy. And I know that one of the things that stood out, or two of the things that stood out, were the service learning pieces he did with the high school program, and his capstone work, which was on honeybees and keeping a hive. And those things stand out, and it matters. But it also matters because it gave him the confidence to take initiative. He's, really been independent. And I think this process allows students to see that they have control over their lives. And that's huge. And those panels of college counselors, they want to see that happen.
I mean, it allows for our youth to create a really potent resume of things they have done and created, an impact they have made on themselves in the world. And that's what stands out, right? Not just to get into an Ivy, not just to get into Stanford, but to grow as human beings, to become citizens of the world and citizens, of this country. And I think that's what's really powerful, is that we're trying to ensure that our children and our teenagers are active and not passive in their education. And I think when universities and when jobs and internships see that, it's something that makes them stand out.
Question, I guess is probably starting with Kristen, but it really covers all three. A two-part question. One, do we have any students who have ever done a capstone in grade 5 and then carried it on to grade 8 in some way, shape, or form, or in grade 8 on to grade 12, or even all three? So has there been a continuation of it over their career at HPA? And the second part of the question, do we have some students, I think it was mentioned maybe that they did something in their senior year as a capstone, and they have carried on that work either in college or as part of their volunteer experience beyond HPA?
And actually, you folks will probably know that better than I will. I think on a skill basis, absolutely. And I suspect that this question is really addressing topic, but honestly, I've seen it happen in terms of skills. So I've seen students who really put together a pretty strong skill set in 5th grade that they really constructed out of this program, and that they've gone on to be actually, and I've even, so one of our students who's actually now at Kamehameha schools, I've seen them go on to be really successful using some of these skills that I saw them really develop for the Capstone program. But Dagan and Aaron, I don't know in terms of actual, and I know it's a little bit young yet at the high school level, but have you noticed that?
This is our second year at high school. I have seen students that have had very similar videography work that they explored in 8th grade complete in 12th. One stream of a capstone, I'm not sure. It could totally exist. It's interesting you talked about skill. I had a call a couple of weeks ago with one of the founders of Big Picture Learning, which is a large kind of consulting group in education. And every time I used the word entrepreneurship, he would shut me down. And he said, how are you going to be an entrepreneur unless you've built certain skills? You really have to hone your craft. You have to grow. You have to be able to kind of have empathy, and you have to be humbled as you're learning different skills, whether it's graphic design or science research. And so this idea of carrying skills forward from 5th grade and 8th grade and 12th grade is really exciting to me. The idea of honing one's craft, the idea of approaching life with excellence and trying to grow in whatever endeavor you're doing is something that I'm excited about as we embark on Capstones. Dagan, do you have anything else to add?
Hey, Dagan, what did Allie Warner do? I have her 5th grade video queued up. What's she doing?
8th grade, she did a marine science curriculum for, I think, grades, K through 3.
Yeah.
In 8th grade, yeah. But it has been, I think the common thread is those skills. You mentioned videography, I believe music production as well. I had some students in 8th grade that did some music related projects their senior year last year.
Amy, are you getting any other questions in? I've exhausted my list for the moment.
I don't see any other questions here.
Well, then I'm going to put Kristen and Dagan and Aaron on the spot and ask them in 15 seconds or less. Can you describe how wonderful the capstone journey is in your year, in grade 5, grade 8, grade 12? Can you in 15 seconds or less say, this is the joy, this is the wonder that I see from my particular perch? Go.
I think we have to start with 5th grade.
Oh my goodness. Come on, I have a 1 minute, 16-second video. All right. This is going to sound so cliche, but really it's the outcomes. I mean, I know we're all about the process and it's super important, but the outcomes always blow me away. I mean, students will do things that I'm like, whoa, I didn't, like, where'd that come out of? We were doing, last year we were doing a presentation, and a student was doing something, and in their presentation, they came out with some research like that they hadn't been showing in my work with them before. And it was so phenomenal. I would just, my jaw dropped in the middle of the presentation. So I think it is those fantastic surprises, which are amazingly common. 15 seconds.
I think of 8th grade as this beautiful mess. It's this very complex, scary, challenging, beautiful thing where they really transition from kind of a younger self into really their identity as a more mature, refined learner. And it's challenging and messy and complex, but they come out on the other side really authentically ready for high school in their next phase.
I think about relationships and community. Watching a senior say, this person got back to me. This person runs the science department at the Washington Post, and they're reading and sharing out my work, right? Or this person is my hero. She took a Hawaiian voyage in canoe and brought it into the water. She is now partnering with me. That to me is magic. That's the chicken skin too. That's my 15 seconds. I wanted to give one anecdote to a question you asked before, and that's the student Michael Hanano, who graduated a couple years ago, and who has this incredible creative voice as a videographer, and really found in a capstone space the ability to get it out there. Started creating material for himself, for our admissions department, that was rooted in authenticity. Is now, his gap year has turned into a bit of a longer gap year, and is traveling across California with bands and with other labels as their videographer, and created much of the content that we used at Alumai, which is a big part of our advancement team and our advancement event. He harnessed our learning community and turned it into a professional community. And to me, that's really exciting too.
Great, thank you all. None of you did it under 15 seconds, but it was perfect. Thank you. I want to say thank you again to all of you for joining us, for being interested in learning more about our capstone program. If you're like me, you might go away from this and you're sit down for dinner tonight or breakfast tomorrow, and you think, oh, I really wish I knew more about whatever it might be, or I really wish I had asked that question of Kristen Tarnas or Dagan Bernstein or Aaron Shorn. And I'll encourage you, when that moment happens, reach out. All of our emails are on the website. You can get to any one of us and fire your question away. We love to talk about this process of learning that really extends K-12 and these moments in grade 5, grade 8, and grade 12 that I think are really exciting. I'll also encourage you, when the time comes in the spring, you're going to be invited to be an audience participation part of the showcase when the time comes for our students who are currently in grade 5, 8, and 12 to talk about their process, to talk about their journey, and to show you where they've ended up. So I'll encourage you to make some time. That'll be coming up later in the spring, but you'll be alerted to that through our all school bulletin, as well as I'm sure some other ways. So. Thank you again to everyone, particularly to Aaron and to Dagan and to Kristen, but also thank you to all of our parents for coming out and joining us for our Talk Shop series tonight. I've enjoyed it, and we are ending right on time according to my clock. So I hope you all have a great evening. And again, when you have more questions, fire them our way. In the meantime, mahalo.